Hi, I'm Katie Halcrow with Power Up Prep, and I'm super excited today to take you through some tips and strategies to help you power up your ACT. If this is your first time with us, first, welcome. Second, check out the link below. There, you're going to find the ACT questions and the note sheets that you can do along with these videos. All right, so let's get those materials together, and we're going to be ready to power up. Okay, welcome back. So we have now completed everything in the English section of the ACT test. So now we're going on to talk about strategies for the reading section. Before we go into talking about specifically how to answer questions in the reading section, what I wanted to talk about were some overview general rules and strategies for the reading section. So general rule number 1, what do you think I'm going to tell you? It's the reading section. What do we do? If you said start by reading, you're like almost everyone, right? You would read the passage first and then go into the questions. But that's actually not what you're going to do. You only have 35 minutes to do 40 questions on the reading section. So general rule number 1 is do not read. Instead, you're going to go straight to the questions. And like I said, we're going straight to the questions because you have so many questions to answer in a relatively short amount of time, as well as get through 4 passages. So if you were to read all of the passages and then try and answer the questions, you would likely run out of time. The other reason that we go straight to the questions is because the questions, almost all of the questions anyway, are asking about specific details, not about general themes. So if you were to read the whole passage and then go to the questions, unless you have a photographic memory, you're gonna have to go back to the passage anyway to figure out what that detail was. So it in terms of timing, it doesn't make sense to do anything but go straight to the questions. You're gonna do the questions in a specific order when you go straight to them, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but just know that rather than reading first, you're gonna go straight to the questions. Okay, general rule number 2 is do not interpret. So what do I mean by that? Well, in English class, what you're probably used to is that you're making meaning out of text, right? So like you read a story in English, you interpret it, you make reference to your own life, you try and figure out what the text means, etc., right? Like that's what you do with your teacher. So I want you to take all of that for this test and throw it out the window, because what the test does is it actually penalizes you for interpreting, inferring, or extrapolating. So rule number 2 is do not interpret. You only want to use what is specifically mentioned in the text when you're doing these questions. Okay, so that leads me into general rule number 3. And general rule number 3 is that you are looking for an exact match answer on line reference and scanning questions. I'm going to go over what line reference and scanning questions look like in just a little bit, but for the vast majority of questions on the reading section of the test, you're looking for an exact match answer. And what I mean by that is that when you're reading the passage, or when you're reading a section of the passage or doing a question, you should be able to find an exact part of the passage that matches to an answer choice. Oftentimes, this is word for word. So you should always, when you're picking an answer, be able to look at the questions and the answer choices and then look at the passage and find a match from the passage to the question where things align exactly. So just make sure that you find an exact match answer before you pick your answer choice. So there should be a specific portion of text that you can reference and be like, oh, that's the answer. That's where it says it. Okay, general rule number 4. If any portion of an answer is incorrect, you have to discard the whole answer. So even if the first part of the answer is totally right and you love it, you're like, oh, I can't imagine a better answer than this answer choice. But then the second part of the answer is not correct because that's not what's in the passage. You have to discard the whole answer. You have to discard that lovely first part of the answer that's totally right because the second part of the answer is wrong, or the second part of the answer choice is wrong. So even if just one word is wrong in an answer choice, you also have to discard it. So it just goes away. Then that leads me into rule number 5. So sometimes you need to find 3 wrong answers rather than one correct answer. when you're doing a test. So sometimes it is on this section a little bit difficult to determine what the right answer is, but on those questions, oftentimes you can figure out what the wrong answers are. So finding 3 wrong answers, just as good as finding 1 correct answer. Okay, so that's the first 5 general rules. We're gonna get to rule number 6 and rule number 7 a little bit later after we go over the question types and how to do them. But those are the first 5 general rules. So just to recap, general rule number 1, don't read the passage, go straight to the questions. It just wastes time if you read the passage first because the questions are asking about details. Rule number 2, do not interpret. The test penalizes you for interpreting. You don't want to make meaning. So, for example, if there was a question that said, when Joe had wrinkles in his forehead, I just gave you the answer. So if there was a question, for example, that said, Joe furrowed his brow, like this. So when Joe furrowed his brow, the text means A, he was angry, B, he was upset, C, he had wrinkles in his forehead, or D, he was sad. We would have to go with answer choice C because that is him having wrinkles in his forehead. That's furrowing your brow, that's literally what it means. And any of those other answer choices, angry, upset, or sad, would be an interpretation of his feelings. Okay, so that's rule number 2. Rule number 3, you're looking for an exact match answer on questions, so you should be able to reference a specific portion of the text and then pick your answer choice from there. Rule number 4, if any portion of the answer is incorrect, you have to discard it. And then rule number 5, finding 3 wrong answers is just as good as finding 1 right one. All right, let's head into the question types. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave them below. We love to hear from you. Also, if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss out on any of our curriculum or other tips and tricks that can help you power up your ACT.